Hello and welcome to your Thursday edition of This Is Ibrox. I'm your host, Kyran Wallace, and tonight I'm joined by Hef. Hef, how are you?
I'm very well, mate. How are you?
I'm good. I wonder what we're going to talk about tonight.
No idea.
International Week, not much going on, is there?
Have you been having any dips in the lock again, Kieran?
No. Anyway, we've actually got plenty to talk about for an international week for a change. Before I jump into everything, joined by our wonderful viewers, listeners, as usual. Make sure you're liking, sharing, and subscribing. So it's a pleasure to be joined with you. And yeah, make sure you're commenting. Anyway, if we're not hang around, I think the big name that's on everybody's lips at the moment is Steven Gerrard. He could possibly be making a return as manager following Russell Martin's departure from the club. More information than what we were getting in the last managerial search coming out. We can kind of piece together what's happened. I'll just pick one tweet, which is from quite a reputable source, from Ben Jacobs from last night. Steven Gerrard to hold face-to-face talks with Rangers over replacing Russell Martin. That's like the first time I've read, I think. Gerrard is the leading candidate, but Rangers sources maintain they will speak to multiple names. I can't trip myself up now. Understand positive remote talks have already taken place with Gerrard, showing an openness to return. That is nothing but encouraging from my point of view. Where I stand on it, Hef, is they've had talks back in April. Things broke down before Russell Martin was then appointed for the job. To me, if things have broke down there because they know what Gerrard wants and Gerrard knows what we were willing to offer, the fact that we've went back in for Gerrard, they've held, it must have been like a Teams meeting, and now the Americans have flown into London. Gerrard's flown into London from Bahrain. Talks are ongoing as far as we know, face-to-face. Both parties wouldn't waste each other's time if there wasn't anything in this, and that's how I'm piecing it together. Just how are you feeling about the whole situation?
I mean, I suppose the main thing is that delighted that Martin's gone. I think
Yeah,
I think I've seen so many people just saying, "Oh, doesn't really matter who we get." The main thing was to get rid of him and get him out the club and everything that he was doing to it, dragging people down. So I suppose the first exciting bit is that it seems to be doing what it was supposed to do and kind of galvanising the fans and getting them together. Because I felt like for a long time, I don't know if you would agree, Kieran, but it was getting quite nasty. It was getting quite fractious amongst the fans. Like people were starting to kind of turn against each other, especially at the protests and all that. So, no, it's good to hear everybody, albeit people will be saying, no, it might not be my first choice, or it might not be something that there, there probably is a little bit of doubt in their mind. But as, for me, the exciting thing is that if you were to ask me who the last three successful managers that we've had in our time, the first name that comes is Gerrard. So
yeah,
bypass Clement and Van Bronckhorst and stuff. So I know sometimes you probably shouldn't go back the way, but in terms of him coming back and it sounded like one of the wee boys in the school, but that aura, like that idea of like him being about the place and like just even like the wee, like, I felt like a wee boy when he was a manager again, like dead excited. Like I've seen him like running up and down the touchline, uh, going up and down to the fans and everything else. Like you were right behind him. I don't feel like we've had that for so long, where I've been fully behind the manager. And that's not to say that at points that with Clement and Van Bronckhorst, I wasn't delighted at some of the results and stuff like that. But like, I don't even think I think the very first time I felt some sort of negativity towards Gerrard was probably the last game before he left, and it just felt as if he was going. So in terms of the excitement, it's coaches we know. Like I know that we'll probably go on to that anyway, but like just knowing that there's a bit of familiarity around it and seeing him get a chance to work with some of these players like that, the midfield. When he first came in, he just completely took everybody by storm, and players who weren't performing were performing for him, or at least for the coaches and stuff like that. So to get back onto a playing field where he's the man who's going into the press conferences and going into that going into the training ground and stuff like that to actually talk to the players and doing it, you've got a bit of confidence behind him that he could actually go and do something rather than just Russell Martin, where you were sitting, like you were sitting waiting every press conference that was going to say something that you would have actually got behind and thought, actually, do you know what? We'll give him the benefit of the doubt. But of all the games that he had, I just never felt at all any sort of affinity with him. And that's not like, obviously that got worse as it went on, but even from the early stages, I don't remember that with Gerrard. And that's, you would probably think that given the fact that we were all in lockdown, we would have been a bit more critical than anything else because we didn't have anything else to do other than sit and watch back highlights and stuff like that. So the fact that he didn't come across as somebody who was hyper criticised in the same way in which Martin does, and that's not that long ago. It's not like, oh well, now that we've got fan media and everything else, that was all on the go way back when Gerrard was there. So I would be excited to see all the fans back together, and I'd be excited to see what it does to the numbers inside Ibrox as well.
Yeah, a great point along the lines of what you're saying there from Andrew Gill in the comments. The players won't know what's hit them with the backing that they will get now. We will see who can sink or swim. And I think that's a great point, just further along the lines of Martin spoke a lot about anxiety and the players feeling the pressure of playing at Ibrox and stuff like that. With hopefully a manager coming in that possibly, I'd probably put money on it now, has been Gerrard. I don't know anything more than anybody else, by the way. This is just my opinion. The fans will come together. That Dundee United game next Saturday, if it is Gerrard that comes in, I can see that being a sellout, whereas probably under Martin you would be talking about 25,000-30,000 again. The fans have been enough, had enough of them. But now that there's a bit of positivity about the place, the players are going to get a backing. There's going to be a sense of we can do something again. And that fixture there is probably one that people have got circled to say, if he's the manager for that game, we're really going to back him. We're going to back the players. Also bring up this comment from Homer in the comments. I've said it several times, but Gerrard needs Rangers and Rangers need Gerrard. Now, the reason I think that's a really good point, Hef, is that we need a manager and we need a figurehead, right? I know that we tried to experiment with the whole modern head coach sort of thing with Russell Martin. Didn't work, right? We can't go and do that again. Gerrard is a figurehead. Like you said, when he speaks, people listen. I think he's the one, when I go back to that, I watched every single one of his press conferences and his interviews, his post-match, his pre-match, the lot, because I enjoyed listening to him. So I always try and put myself in the shoes of the players. And if I'm enjoying listening to him and I feel motivated by listening to him, the players will too. He knows what he's talking about. He's been there. He's done it. And he's got a league title at Rangers to back it up. Now, it's no criticism on guys like Clement, Beale, Gio. Gio didn't speak enough. Beale spoke for too long. Clement didn't give anything away whatsoever. I just struggled to listen to them too much. Russell Martin, it was never his fault. With Gerrard, you're getting the package that you can go back now and watch interviews of him and reminisce a wee bit. I know we've been doing a bit of it in the chat. So for me, back to the point that we need the figurehead, but also for Gerrard, right? He came away from Rangers, and I say it about a lot of players. The majority of players leave Rangers and don't go into bigger clubs than Rangers. Gerrard went to Aston Villa, didn't happen. Went to Etihad, lost his job there too, and it's not been a good time for him. He's done that Rio Ferdinand podcast the other day, and he spoke about being at a club, but not any club. The club has got to have a demand for winning, and that is exactly what we offer. He also spoke highly about it being the right fit. There's just something about Gerrard and Rangers that works. You see, you can take Clement, for example, winning titles at other clubs, and it didn't work from here, albeit the circumstances weren't great. We're just a good fit for each other. Can you see it working for a second time, Hef?
Aye, no, I definitely can. And I don't think it's as clear cut as like he's going to come in and win us the league straight away. Obviously, I mean the damage has been done at the start of the season. I think he's got quite an uphill battle to go there, but I think it comes across. Everybody talks about in the media the way that Rangers hounded Martin out and stuff like that. I don't think people are expecting too much. Do you know what I mean, Kieran? I think people are expecting to win against teams that we should be winning against. and challenge against teams that we necessarily shouldn't, or at least.
Listen, I'll just be grateful if we create a chance in front of goal the way things have went this season.
But that's what you mean. Like, see, when you look at games that we lost and games that we drew, and even the games that we won in like the last minute and stuff, it's like, oh, well, are you not happy with that? Should you? No, of course we weren't happy at that point. That winning 2-1 in the last kick of the ball. I reckon that if Gerrard comes in, like we talk about grace period and he'll get to January and then the pressure will be really on him. I don't think so. I think people will probably get behind him, and I think that, like what you said, is that having that figurehead and having somebody about the place that people talk about that idea of when he walks into a room or something, you know that he's there. He's just got that sort of presence, and he knows that the coaches that he can rely on will be doing a lot of the work that he's probably not that familiar with. And I think there's a lot of similarities between Gerrard and Ferguson, like Barry, and I don't know what it is about that idea of, like, obviously in terms of standards, Steven Gerrard was a significant level above in terms of playing in the Premier League for so long and winning Champions League titles and stuff. But that mentality to just stay at the one club for a long period of time, having worked his way up through the ranks in the middle of the park, dominating, we respond to that because on and off the park, whether it was a player or a manager, we just want to be seen as if they're doing their job and actually putting in the effort and trying to make things better. I don't think that with Gio and with Clement and with Martin, it was as if it was like, well, calm down, everything will be fine. Whereas what we want, even if that's what they thought, what we wanted to hear was, no, that's not good enough. We need to get back in there. We need to do this, and instead of sitting smiling at press conferences and all that sort of stuff. So, yeah, I mean, it's the old cliche, and we spoke about it in the last pod as well. But it's like that old thing, oh, he just gets it. And I do think that there is a bit of that in it. Is that I don't think that anybody's going to have to sit down with Gerrard and explain to him that these games mean something. And whereas if you get someone else in, even somebody like Muscat who's played before, I mean, was he here long enough to fully understand what games? I know that his mentality is, he was obviously quite a dirty player when he was here and stuff like that, and he got stuck in, and reputation with Warnockton and Millwall and all those kind of videos. But like somebody, if you're talking about somebody who's going to come in and people are going to just like straight away give him respect without even having to work too hard, I think Gerrard ticks all those boxes. And as we said, he knows the area, he knows ex-pros he can call on from his time for being here. I mean, he was here for 3 years. It's not as if he just dipped his toe in the water and then left. And let's remember as well,
was that a dig at Russell Martin?
2 digs. In fact, how many times has he been in the lot now?
Tell me this. Sorry to cut you off quickly there.
No.
Have you got any doubts about Gerrard returning?
I suppose the obvious doubt is that he didn't do very well at Villa and he didn't do very well at El Ettifaq. But I mean, kind of take the Saudi one with a pinch of salt into it. I mean, I don't necessarily think you've got that sort of same drive to do well when you've got such constraints on who you can bring in terms of the international rulings that they had, and obviously as well, like moving his family and not necessarily knowing how that was going to work. I mean, he brought in Jordan Henderson and then he left within 6 months or something to go to Ajax because he absolutely hated it.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know if there's maybe a bit too much of a harsh criticism on the Saudi one. The Aston Villa one was a car crash, but he took the Aston Villa job on with the eye of, if he did well there for a year, Klopp was going to go, then he would have got his job, and that was the whole thing of, well, if he really wants the job at Liverpool, he's going to need to prove that he could do it in the Premier League in some way. So I don't think Aston Villa, whether that was the right club or not, I think any club in the Premier League he would have taken on just in order to get that step towards the Liverpool door. And it shot him in the foot because actually he made such an arse of it that by the time it came round, it was almost like a given that he would not get it because he'd made so many errors. But the other thing would be, I suppose, the doubt is that, I mean, the obvious doubt is that the whole taxation thing and whether or not we actually think it will happen. But in terms of doubts, if he got appointed, I suppose, whether or not he would get the backroom staff and stuff like that in line to work. Because when everything's fresh and new and exciting, there's a bit of buzz, there's a bit of energy.
Yeah.
Coming back as almost like, I'm not saying he would come back with his tail between his legs, but there must be a part of him that would think that way, like, all right, well, I've got a point to prove. Whereas I felt like when he came up here the first time, he didn't have that point necessarily to prove.
So I think that's my sort of doubt about it when you're saying about a point to prove. I just wonder what motivates him to come back. What's his motivation to come back? I know that he said in that podcast the other day as well that he feels like he's got unfinished business. And that, I don't know if that reassured me a wee bit, that he feels like he maybe should have done better at Rangers. But the fact that he left, not so much the fashion that he left in, but he left is pretty much a bit of an icon here, having won 55 and stopped them getting their 10th. And this was massive for all of us at a time where we really needed it. So for him to come back and really put that legacy on the line again, and he's taken a wee bit of a risk, but like we said at the top of the show with the comment that he needs us, we need him, and I think it's a good match, but that's my only doubt. And it'll probably be asked, if he does come back, it will probably be asked in the first press conference he does, that what's his motivation for coming back. But I'm going to grab this comment here from Hugo Bear. Hef, you touched on it a second ago. Backroom staff will be vital. Now, there's a lot of names being bandied about. We've seen Gary McAllister earlier in the week saying never say never about coming back. Seen Jermaine Defoe saying things that he would love to come back. It would be a no-brainer. He's also just posted within the last hour of himself walking through a duty-free in an airport. This is after him rinsing out his Rangers 55 Champions glass and also his retro Rangers jumper. Other names that have been linked with the backroom staff, you have got Steve Holland. I think he was Di Matteo's assistant at Chelsea, if memory serves me correctly. Neil Chrisley was his assistant at Aston Villa when Michael Beale walked away. Now, I'll throw that name at you first. Michael Beale, right? If he was to come back as one of his assistants, I think I would be all right with it. The only thing with Michael Beale being here as manager is that it didn't work out for him. He didn't win enough games. It wasn't the Michael Beale we thought we were going to get. And then probably the only stain from a personal point of view was the whole fake Twitter profile and arguing with fans. Like, it got a wee bit, didn't get nasty, it just got a wee bit messy. But he's never said a word and negatively towards the club or anything like that. And I'd urge anyone that's listening just now that hasn't, JB and Craig had Andy Firth on the show on Sunday night. A fantastic job of it they done. And Andy actually said, I think they put this question to him as well, and Andy actually said that Michael Beale is the best coach he has worked with by a country mile. Whether or not Michael Beale would want to come back to Rangers, I'm not so sure. But in terms of a coaching point of view, like we've seen that with Beale, you can be a very, very good coach, but being a good manager is a different kettle of fish. You could maybe attach that to Russell Martin if you want, because by all means, I've never heard anyone say he's a bad coach, but it didn't work out for him as a manager. Who would you like to see in that backroom staff, and would you like to see Beale amongst it, Hef?
If he decides to go for Beale, I'd get him his first pint at the Loudon back in, No, I think if he was to go for Beale, it would be Gerrard's choice, and you just have to back it. I don't think there would be any personal grievance. He wasn't very good. He was riding on the back of everybody saying that he was the brains behind Gerrard, which for me just almost just made it sound as if Gerrard wasn't that great. And I think that from a point of view of like you're wanting a bit of togetherness between the coaching staff and stuff like that, I don't know whether or not there is still a relationship there between Beale and Gerrard to the point where he would want to come back in that circumstance. Maybe when they were abroad, it made a bit more sense because the pressure wasn't on them and they could just get back to focusing on things. But I don't know. I think that was the stain for me, was that idea of when he came back, he kept talking about people like, oh no, but I did the coaching, and Gerrard was the figurehead, but it was still me, and I just didn't ever get that impression that the coaching that was there from when Gerrard was there ever really transcended into when Beale was there. It seemed like night and day in terms of like the levels and I don't know what the momentum in which the players were actually playing at. It seemed like totally insignificant. But if it's not going to be him, I don't know. I said in the chat the other day that Davy Weir was sniffing about, obviously doing the commentary on the last game there, and I thought that if he's up here and he's not got a job, we need to do something to get him in some sort of capacity, because he's worked under obviously worked under Walter Smith, and he's had such a high level, kind of such a pedigree to go down and get the jobs that he's done. So he must have some amount of talent on his books that he could call upon from being down at Brighton and Brentford and everywhere else that he was at to come to Ibrox and say, listen, here's where we go and here's how we do it. Whether or not that kind of steps on the toe of Thelwell, I mean, I don't know, but even at least in a coaching capacity, I'd like to see him. The other names mentioned was obviously Stephen Davis. I'd quite like to see him in some sort of capacity, but whether or not he's of the same standard of coach as somebody like a Culshaw or a Steve Holland or something like that, I don't know. We don't want to get into that rhythm of just bringing in players, ex-players, just because they were ex-players. I think Jermaine Defoe was an exceptional striker in his career, and he's just said that he's just finished his badges. So you'd like to think that he would be looking to prove a point as to say, right, okay, well, here's some of the fresh ideas I've got. Let's go on about it. And I don't think any of us would say that our strikers are flying, that we would be happy to knock back a striking coach at this moment in time. I heard Billy Dodds on the radio last night. He said, well, did I not do that last year? And I said, well, there's quite a difference between Billy Dodds and Jermaine Defoe. So,
chill out, Billy, my man.
chill out, Billy. It's all right. You've still got a place. No, but I would like to see, if Gerrard's going to be the main man and he doesn't bring back Beale, which, to be honest, I'm neither here nor there about, it's his call. But I would like to see Gary Mack back in the setup, because everybody that you speak to, even like you were saying, Andy, on Andy Firth on that podcast on Sunday, he was saying that he was a great guy, just always joking in with the lads and stuff like that. I don't get the impression that there's been anybody like that since like Gerrard left, because I don't think that was the style of Van Bronckhorst or Clement. And I don't know, I'm not going to say that there was a language barrier, because obviously all those coaches would speak fluent English, but in terms of just the humour to actually get in amongst it and being close and around and having the stories to tell about being at Liverpool and all the rest of it, I think that having a similar setup but with tweaks, obviously if Beale's not going to be there, maybe the introduction of Steve Davis in some sort of capacity, or Jermaine Defoe, I think that would be really good. The Steve Holland one excites me because obviously he was working with Southgate and with England, who, albeit never actually done the business and won anything, but performed well at major tournaments enough that you'd like to think that he would be coming with a bit of pedigree that the players would kind of sit up and listen. Plus, if there's players that we've got who have been in that setup, you know, like we've got Aarons and players like that who are English and might be thinking, right, okay, if I perform well here, there's a bit of talk there that he could get down. And, you know, like, I don't get that feeling that, like, for the last couple of managers that we've ever had anybody who you went, oh, well, if I play well for him, he'll take me to the next club, because there was no real sign of him going to another or bigger, better club, whether it be Van Bronckhorst or Clement, because it just seemed as if it was that was it. Like, after that, they were going to go down again, you know, whereas with Gerrard, he's came back, or he's came back, I'm announcing it. He's going to come back, he will come back.
I would love that if you announced it. Like, that was the announce. He's back, and it's just you. He's
just got the call there. Jermaine Defoe's just posted a selfie with him outside Oppen Howie.
See, on your point about what you're saying there about players want to play for him and go to the next level and stuff like that, like sometimes when a manager comes in and you think, right, they're going to have to work with this group of players that have basically failed the previous manager, or the manager failed them, whichever way you want to look at it, right? I think what I kind of like about this situation, I'm not trying to convince myself here, I'm trying to look for the positives as well, is that we're shopping in a market, or we have shopped in a market there. We've just spent the guts of 30 million shopping in a market which we shopped in when Gerrard was here the last time under Mark Allen. We were buying players from the Championship. We were loaning promising young English players from Premiership academies. And it was more or less like, it's not so much a British spine, but there was a British core to the team. And that's kind of what we've got just now. I feel like Thelwell is working in a way that Mark Allen kind of did as well. So the squad, don't get me wrong, isn't as good as the finished article that Gerrard ended up with, but it's not too dissimilar on where the players' backgrounds and stuff are now. This is another thing I like. I felt that when Gerrard was here, he improved players, especially young players. Now, we spoke about like players like Ant-Man, right, that came in and his best game was the games before he was coached under Russell Martin, Magoma as well. There's players in that team that need a bit of guidance and they need a bit of coaching and they need shaped into what they could be. I think the one that jumps right out when you think of Steven Gerrard coming to us, who could improve under him, is Nico Raskin, obviously. You look at players around the team like Asgard, bags of potential. Rothwell, we've not seen the best of him yet. You think back to how well Gerrard done with Ryan Kent develop him as a football player after reading everywhere that every other club he had been at had been terrible. Comes to us, it was unbelievable. I think Ajedi Kisama with stuff like that he's good just now, but how good could he be under proper coaching and a proper manager? Now, I know I've rattled off a few names there, but is there any players which you see in that squad just now that have maybe underperformed and you can get excited about they could improve under proper coaching and a good management team?
I know, definitely. I think the Raskin one's got to be top of the list in terms of not even just necessarily from the point of view of tactically or where he should be on the pitch or technically like how to hit a ball or anything like that, but that mentality. I mean, he's been given a captain armband a few times last year, and obviously Tav's not going to play forever. So I think if he can instill some of that mentality into Raskin, not that he's not got it now, but he's no that level of stick here, get stuck in, fight for your badge, and all the rest of it. I think that he would excel, and I think it would be one of those things that they would say to Raskin, right, we're building this team around you. You're the core player. Everything goes through you, and just make him feel 10 foot tall. And I think he would be. I think he would be a new player. I think it would be good to see as well how he deals with players like Barron, because Barron, I don't think he's as good technically as what Ryan Jack was, but he's the same build of like a player who gets stuck in, grafts, does a lot of the kind of leg work for some of the other more technical players. I think he would really appreciate a player like Barron who does get stuck in and would maybe give him more of a role, not just playing him just as a revolving door of midfield trios to try and work out. I think he would have a mindset of when we want to play and we want to get stuck into teams domestically, you're the guy. When we want to play a bit more technically and we're wanting somebody who's going to be a deep lying playmaker, we might play with somebody like Rothwell or something like that. You know, like I'm not saying necessarily that those two, but like he will have more of a mindset as to how to do it, similar to like when him Danny used to play in Europe. Like that idea of like when you can change it and make it work however it best
Horses
fits.
for courses.
Exactly, and I think the other ones that you would like to see is Butland will obviously run through a brick wall for him, and I know that that's difficult to make such an impact when he's at the goal. But in terms of him, he will fall off every word that Gerrard says and that coaching staff, and he'll I think he'd fully get behind them, and even better in his leadership role. It'd be good to see as well players like, I mean, we've talked about Ant-Man, but Finlay Curtis as well. Like, if he's getting reports to say that this young boy's brilliant, we need to give him a chance. Bailey Rice, any of these players that are kind of on the periphery of the squad. I mean, the squad that's there haven't set the world alight, so why not give these players a chance? And yeah, it would be good as well to see how he gets the strikers like Big Chermiti to sing a tune, because it'd be brilliant to see him come in and just go, do you know what? you've had a lot of pressure on your shoulders. Here's how I would manage you, because everybody knows the way that he worked with Morelos, and I mean, he was an absolute bag of draggies to work with, but he still managed to get. I mean, he looked like if it wasn't for him on the park, we wouldn't get goals at times. Like, he was so important for us. But every single person that you speak to is like, oh, he's a nightmare, absolute nightmare. But if it was that much of a nightmare, then he wouldn't have been as big of a success as he was. Gerrard knew how to handle him, and I think that if he can get that balance with somebody like Chermiti of, when to put his arm around him and when to tell him to, put a lighter underneath it, I think that would be interesting to see just how that would play out, because even players like Lyle Cameron and stuff like that who are coming into the club who are new but hungry and want to learn, somebody like him, they would just absorb it like a sponge. I think it would be great.
Yeah. The other one kind of got brought to my attention yesterday was Dujon Sterling, forgotten man. He posted on his Instagram out training on the grass at the training centre. When I seen that he had posted that, he actually posted with a song over it, with the words of "Let's Go." So I don't know if that was a cryptic clue, but in terms of Dujon Sterling himself, I think that's a player that Gerrard would absolutely love. Like, athletic, aggressive, soaks up information. He could be coached. Don't get me wrong, I don't think he's technically great, but within the right structure and within the right coaching, I think, again, he could be a very valuable player. And we brought in Aaron's on loan, and we thought he would take over Tav at right back. It's not worked out for him. Again, has he been underperforming, or can he just not cope with the pressure at Rangers? We really don't know these things until we see them under good management and good guidance. And yeah, for a wee change this season, it's feeling a bit exciting, Hef, that we could be getting someone in that could give us a lift. If it's not Gerrard, after doing all this, if it's not Gerrard, is there anybody else you would be satisfied with taking the job?
I would probably be quite deflated if we didn't get Gerrard, but obviously it seems as if it's in his hands whether or not he wants it. But I think the obvious choice would be to go for McInnes. But again, whether or not he would be, if we go for him and he says no, that looks terrible that we've went for two managers, one out of work, one in work, and they've both said no. What manager? Because we're going to have to go through the formal process of we're looking to speak to him, so therefore it will know that it'll be known in the media that we went for him. To then have that on our mark, and then Hearts go and split the old firm or something like that, I think it would just add to cataclysmic errors of the whole season. So in order to not get egg on our face, I suppose we'd need to make sure that we had those assurances before we went for him. But I would have went for him before Martin. I thought that when he got that Hearts job, I thought we've kind of missed one there, because I thought that was a good opportunity for us to go for him. And it would seem daft probably to say, oh, well, he was at Kilmarnock before and he wasn't obviously firing on all cylinders for that second season. The first one he did great, but for that last season he wasn't amazing. But to go from there to then go to Hearts and then be there for a couple of months, I don't know if he does that, and I know that there's rumours saying that he's up for it. But I mean, it's all paper talk, isn't it? We don't know. And we spoke before about Muscat, but I don't know, might be too much of a risk for me.
Yeah, we're in risk of being here for over an hour. The one last point I want to make is that what I like is what's been fed to us is that Pragmarat, Andrew Kavanagh and Greta Steinson are the ones that are leading the recruitment process for the new manager. The only reason I say that, and I know that Thelwell and Stewart aren't exactly the flavour of the month, and that's the understatement of the season, the fact that our two leading candidates for the last job were Russell Martin and David Ancelotti. Russell Martin lasted 123 days at us, and even that was 123 days too long. The other being David Ancelotti, who I think on last checking currently sits 6th in the league with league champions Botafogo, and he's been in that job less time than Russell Martin, and if reports are right, he's next for the sack as well. if they're the two candidates that they brought to the table and one of them got the job, then I have no trust whatsoever in Thelwell and Stewart making the choice as manager. Now, that doesn't mean to say that the guys selecting it now are going to be perfect, but it gives me a lot more confidence that it's not they two being the figureheads of who's going to select the next manager. So, yeah, from my point of view, I'm very excited. I'm a huge Gerrard fan. Loved him from when he was a player, even more when he was our manager, and even more when he brought us 55. Hopefully, we're in the cusp of him coming back, Hef. Hopefully, the next time we are live here, he's being announced as our manager. And that's just the way I see it. We speak from a fan's point of view. We're getting a wee bit excited. But yeah, let's wrap it up at that. We've been here a wee bit longer than we should have been. So, Hef, thank you very much for joining me tonight. Always a pleasure to have you on.
No problem, mate. Thanks very much.
No problem at all. And thank you to everyone that's commented. The comments have been flying in. Sorry I couldn't get as much on the screens as I wish I could. Remember that we also are available on all your podcast platforms. So if you don't catch us on YouTube, you can catch us there via audio only. And yeah, any links are in the description. Please remember to like, subscribe and share. And thank you very much. Goodbye.